In terms of reality, I'm gay married.
Ooh.
Right? Like, what is the point of this conversation?
Because you're not really married.
I'm sorry. I'm going to outright call you a fascist.
Oh, no.
And say that what you're saying is hate speech.
I have XX chromosomes, Michael.
You have XX chromosomes?
Yeah, would you call me she, her now?
I don't. I'll
looks like
I'll defer. I'll defer to you.
What's up, YouTube? Today we will be reacting to the latest episode of Surrounded. I was on the previous one, so kind of got some affinity for it now, and I want to check out this one. It's one conservative versus 25 LGBTQ activists. The conservative's name is Michael Knowles. Pretty interesting, to say the least. So we'll look at a few different clips, and I'll give my perspective, mainly from a Christian worldview. So let's check it out.
My first claim is that there is no such thing as same-sex marriage. Wow.
Nice to meet you,
How
Michael.
are you, sir? Nice to see you.
I am doing well. So your claim, what's the underlying philosophy of your claim?
Well, I guess the underlying historical part of my claim is that everyone for all of history everywhere until, and I'm being generous, 2001, agreed with my view that there's no such thing as same-sex marriage. So it seems to me that marriage intrinsically requires sexual difference. And furthermore, I think that any claim that marriage could be redefined to include same-sex marriage would render the term marriage incomprehensible.
Would you say that this is based off of natural law and how Thomas Aquinas defines natural law?
There's a good natural law argument for it, but I think it's based on more than that.
It's more than that.
Based on anthropology.
But then would you say that marriage is a set of legal rights or is it a social role?
I think marriage is...
So a lot of what's going to be discussed in this conversation is like, is marriage just a legal institution, right? And there's obviously a part of marriage that is legal, but kind of this question arose in my mind, what came first, marriage or laws? And it's actually really hard to tell because marriage is such a historic institution of humanity, right? But I think another question to ask is if marriage was outlawed, like plain and simple, would people still get married? And I think the answer is yes, which means in some ways it exists outside of the law, which is really interesting. Let's continue.
Is an institution. I think it's the fundamental political institution. I think, getting back to classical philosophy,
of course,
that man is fundamentally a social animal. So, I think at the bedrock of politics is the unit of the family. And, of course, intrinsic to the family is marriage.
But all of those, especially with natural law, is just an assertion without evidence to back that claim, in that we see marriage over time in various cultures has been different things.
In which cultures would you say you see same-sex marriage?
I did not say same-sex marriage particularly, but the role of it when it comes to family, when it comes to the conditions. Because would you also say that if somebody is lawfully married, especially in the eyes of the church, they cannot be divorced and then married again?
Well, I oppose divorce and remarriage, but I'm making a more modest claim than that. I'm just saying that at its core, marriage necessarily involves two different sexes.
But how would you prove that? Because all of natural law is just this assertion. I can just as easily say the opposite, in that marriage is a set of legal rights.
You keep bringing up natural law. I'm actually speaking even more basically. I love natural law, but I'm speaking even more basically than that. It seems to me that the only way that marriage could have a meaning is if it involves different sexes.
But once again, you're defining that meaning. But marriage essentially is a set of rights conferred from two spouses when it comes to inheritance, when it comes to the rights of the children, when it comes to a number of about 1,100 federal and state rights.
Okay, then what you're getting at is...
And that's where I think there's more to marriage than that. There's actually a relational component of two people being united, which is unique. And then, of course, I'll take the Christian perspective that, and it really is a question, is marriage instituted by human beings and therefore we get to dictate how it plays out? Or is marriage actually outside of human beings dictated and instituted by God? Right? Which is a really good question. Obviously, I would hold that marriage is instituted by God. But as I'm just observing this conversation, that's like the nuance that they have to wrestle with. But Michael's not actually going to take that approach, which I really appreciate. Right? He's not saying, "Oh, it's instituted by God," even though I'm sure he believes that. He's taking a different form of argument. So let's check it out.
Is interesting and might help us move forward. How would you define marriage?
I would say marriage is a legal contract between individuals when it comes to a set of property laws, when it comes to family law, when it comes to children, and many other rights that are conferred. And we do see that those rights have been conferred to members of the same sex.
And that's why I pointed out earlier or questioned, would marriage exist outside of laws? And I think the answer is yes, which means you need a definition of marriage that doesn't just come down to the legal aspect of it. And I'm sorry for pausing on this guy's face in such a goofy spot, but keep going.
To say that same-sex marriage does not exist is not true because we see it.
Well, you say that marriage entails rights pertaining to children. Well, two men cannot create a child.
But neither can infertile couples. And there are a number of couples that cannot have children.
Sure. So infertility sometimes occurs, and that's unfortunate.
And so does gay marriage.
Well, no, gay marriage cannot occur. I guess.
But you're asserting that without proof. We see that it does happen in that the word that we mean marriage.
You could
the legal rights.
You could say that there's such a thing as a square ball. You could say that, but a square ball doesn't really exist.
Would you agree that people have been lawfully wedded in the eyes of the government, and those two parties are members of the same sex?
No, I'm saying that isn't possible. So laws can assert all sorts of crazy things.
But you're asserting that without proof.
Well, like the law could say that a black person isn't a human being, but that wouldn't be true. That wouldn't make it true.
Well, once again, when we get into this...
And so I really like Michael Knowles' argument here because he's asserting the problem with just stating that marriage is only bound up legally, right? So he just kind of points out the flaw in this idea. And he's kind of saying like it's a logical contradiction that marriage can only be between, a man and a woman. And I think there's some good reason for that. Maybe one that I'll go into that he doesn't mention is just the idea of consummation. And can two people outside of male and female actually consummate a marriage? Like they can do some pseudo form of consummation, but is that actually what true consummation is? And if you can't actually participate in the act of true consummation, are you really coming together in the union of marriage? Just a really good question to consider.
Aristotelian view of the world, that's an assertion. Would you agree?
You're bringing up Aristotle. I don't know. I'm not bringing up Aristotle.
Well, would you say
I like Aristotle.
That Aristotle, Thomas Aquinas, in the traditional view of the magisterium of the Catholic Church are a view that you use to base your worldview off of?
I am Catholic, but marriage actually even predates the church. So I guess my view is your definition of marriage seems to get a little muddled. You say it's a legal arrangement of family, but to say that marriage is a legal arrangement pertaining to family is circular. Of course, it's a legal arrangement pertaining to family. I'm saying what is it? When you say it's an arrangement that pertains to children, you say, well, okay, now we're getting closer because only a man and a woman can produce a child in principle. Now, of course, some couples are infertile, but just because a human being, let's say, loses an arm doesn't mean that human beings only have one arm or might have three arms. We're discussing what the
component. And that necessary component doesn't come from anywhere.
No. Well, I'll give you my definition of marriage.
Absolutely.
I think marriage is a lifelong union between a man and a woman ordered toward the procreation and education of children and as a secondary matter for the mutual support of the spouses.
Well, once again, when we say ordered towards, is to look at the world with these preconceived notions about things.
I'm not preconceiving anything. I'm just observing nature as it is. No, I'm just observing nature, and I'm saying that that's what marriage is.
But if we're observing nature, we see that there are same-sex couples. So if we are observing
No, I'm not saying there can't be same-sex couples. I'm just saying there can't be same-sex marriage.
They keep going on for a little bit more, but for the sake of time, let's check out the next prompt in the next clip.
My next claim is that transgenderism should be eradicated from public life entirely. Hello? Hi.
Okay, so if we're going to think about women getting raped in bathrooms, right? It's a small percentage of trans...
For context, this is the second person that has gone, and that topic was already brought up. So that's why this person sat down and brought that up immediately.
People that are doing it. I'm not denying that that's happening because it is a reality and it's an awful thing for women to have to go through.
Yeah.
But then what are we doing about the men that are the 93% of sexual violence towards women?
No, hopefully arresting them and putting them in prison.
So this is something that I'll say, to Michael's maybe fault a little bit. This is a complete red herring, and it is a leading off of the actual topic, and it has nothing to do with whether or not, it has nothing to do with transgenderism, right? It has nothing to do with trans people. This is just the reality that men commit this crime in our country. It has nothing to do with the actual topic. It's complete red herring, and I think Michael should have called this out. But it's tough in the moment.
And what are you doing before that? Why are men the highest percentage for this? If it's such a bad thing for trans women to use the bathroom when a very, very, very small amount of women are being raped by trans women, why are we not having any sort of things before for men?
I think we try to enforce our laws and protect people from rape, and so we take
apparently not very well.
No, I think relatively well. We have a relatively low rate of these kinds of violent crimes compared to other places in the world. But in one area, we're talking about men forcing themselves into women's bathrooms. This is one area where we don't need to allow them to do that. It's a needless risk. It's based on a false view of reality and claims of rights, so-called rights, from confused men that infringe on the legitimate rights of women, not just in bathrooms, but also in sports competitions, also in scholarships, also in just about anywhere else in society. So I think that we have the right to insist upon some kind of reality, because I think not only will that be better for women, not only will that be better for society broadly, but that especially will be better for the individuals who are confused about their gender identity.
And how are you going to prevent trans women from using the female bathroom? How are you going to tell? What's the tea?
There are some giveaways, contrary to what the trans activists
and what are
say. Men who identify as women, you can usually tell.
And what are they? You can tell all you want.
Yeah, broad shoulders, Adam's apple, and like the face, and
Right.
Yeah.
Congratulations. Like the celebration of it's confusing to me. It's like you can disguise yourself, right? I'm assuming this person is saying I'm a trans woman, right? And it's like, yeah, some people will be capable of disguising themselves to the point where you can't tell. That doesn't make it okay. That doesn't doesn't mean we shouldn't have laws that have people going to their correct bathroom for their sex, right? It's like, yeah, there's always going to be anomalies, but for the most part, Michael Knowles is right here. For the most part, you can tell when someone is, trans or whatever, and so I just wanted to point that out. It's like you think you have a moment of being like, look, you can't tell that I'm actually a guy. Like, that's always weird to me. It's like, you can't tell that I'm actually a guy. That's really what this person is saying, whether they realize it or not. It's like, look, you can't tell. I'm always like, so you do, like, there's always this weird sense, like, so you do acknowledge that you actually look in a way that your biology doesn't represent. You actually do acknowledge that in a way, which is really interesting. And all I'm doing is pointing out this is not a good argument. It's just not a good argument.
You can tell. You can usually tell.
Usually.
Not all the time, but usually.
Okay. So if you can only usually tell, what are you going to do to prevent it?
Well, look, a man who doesn't even identify as trans, a man who's just a nefarious fellow could sneak into a woman's bathroom. And so we have to enforce the law.
93%, because what are you doing about men?
We should enforce the law against people who break it.
Simple enough. And once again, a red herring.
Again, are you doing, like, you care to claim about women so much because trans people in the bathroom is so scary.
My claim
what
here
are we doing
is,
in other areas?
my actual claim here is that transgenderism is false and we should eradicate it from public life because it's harmful to everyone.
Okay.
That's my actual. If you want to talk about the claim, we're actually
debating.
Yeah.
What does transgenderism in public look like to you?
It's allowing men to be treated for the purposes of the law as women. It's men taking 900 sports trophies from women in recent years.
And they didn't take 900.
They took 900. There's a report just came out from the United Nations, actually. 890 trophies and medals across 600 women who were competitors, across 29 different sports and 400 competitions. That came out like yesterday.
And they deserved them.
It didn't happen, and they deserve them. Okay, that is the logic I hear from the pro-trans crowd.
This is so... Oh, my gosh. He points out a fact that men are literally taking women's trophies in sports. This person goes, it didn't happen. He gives the evidence for the fact, and this person goes, they deserved it. Like, oh, my... Because a part of my whole problem with just even this whole conversation, like not just the surrounding conversation, the whole conversation is one side, particularly the liberal side, is often not presenting what they believe with anything but anecdotal experience, in that the majority, if not all, I mean, whatever, like reality is saying that what is occurring on this whole side is not helpful. It's actually harmful, which is Michael Knowles' argument here, that it's harmful to society in a myriad of ways. And he's just listing out some examples, right? Let's keep it going.
Thank you. They do deserve them, because I'm sure they followed the specifications for the sport, and that's why they were there in the first place.
All right, pause. You've been voted out by the majority.
Good job.
They all clap. They clap at like almost every person, which maybe you could say it's like being nice. Somebody even said good job. It's like there was no good job done. This person quoted a couple red herrings and had no argument for the actual topic. No pushback any way whatsoever on whether or not transgenderism should actually be, the ideology should actually be done away with. No actual pushback on that, other than a red herring in the topic on men's and women's bathrooms. That's what we got from the conversation. And just as a person who cares about logic and good arguments, I haven't seen one in this whole thing. So I wanted to check out a clip from the fourth claim. I skipped the third. I encourage you to go watch the whole video. But I think it's the most reasonable person in the whole circle, and how the circle responds to her is fascinating. So I'll let Michael say the clip, and then we'll check out the conversation.
My next claim is that pride parades should be banned.
Sorry, guys.
Hello.
Hi, how's it going?
Doing very well.
All right, great to speak with you.
The pleasure's all mine.
All right, so pride parades should be banned. That's your claim, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I can meet some middle ground with you. Sorry, guys. I think pride has kind of became a bad representation of what our community is.
Yeah, I agree.
It's not all just like sex toys and leather.
Yeah, right.
Unfortunately. Which is why I think, most conservatives kind of are completely on the other.
Look at that. I just think this is wild. The moment I saw it, I was like, you have got to be kidding me. She literally goes, look, our community isn't just all about just this, kind of outward, inappropriate, really, outward celebration of sex, and the flags go up. She's actually trying to make an argument that their community matters as a people. Like, whether anyone agrees with that or not, at least this is like a good place to start. And she's trying to dismantle all of the surface level notions of their community and trying to have some middle ground with them. And they're voting her out. Which, I don't know, it's just baffling to me. It shows you how honestly twisted and perverse the whole thing is. that when someone comes in and tries to give a little bit of reason, nope, get them out. Get them out. Crazy.
Other side, it's like the pendulum swing. Is that how you say it?
Yeah.
Okay, so like one side of the coin is pretty much that, you know, LGBT, we have fought so hard for our rights. You know, we kind of leaned so far one way, whereas like now, you know, we've kind of accepted too much, right? As far as like we're so open-minded that
our brains fell out.
you could say that.
Yeah.
In some.
And she's like, any reasonable, rational person would totally agree with this, right? That it started with just some basic rights, the right to get married, right? The right to just, you know, heck, in some places in the world, it still is criminal to be a homosexual, right? So even like removing those laws, those different type of rights, and she's going, it swung so far off into left field that in a lot of ways it's just disgraceful. That's what she's recognizing, and I'm steel manning her argument for her a little bit. And like I'm saying, this is a person that's so much more reasonable to talk to because she recognizes how bad it's gotten.
Aspect, however, it doesn't take away the fact that, you know, there's still gay people that exist. I don't think pride parades should be banned. However, I think we should portray a different image of it.
I think you're quite right. You know, for all of history and everywhere in the world, there have been people who were a little odd.
She got him to agree. Another flag goes up. So he basically just backtracked on his actual claim. His claim is pride parades should be banned. She goes, we should actually just reshape them. He goes, I think you're right. Flag up.
You know, or they have desires that are not the mainstream. And so I get it. I'm not saying we need to like totally deny that or, you know, toss people out of society or anything. It's just, I said we should eradicate the transgender ideology. Yeah, which is a false account of human nature.
And I just want to say something here because throughout the whole video, I've seen comments. It's this idea that and it's their inability to actually listen. I think it lacks charity. I think it shows complete bias, right? Their whole idea is that he's saying that trans people should be eradicated. That's what they're claiming. He's saying transgenderism, the ideology, should be eradicated. That has nothing to do with harming people physically, right? It's like saying poverty should be eradicated. Does that mean going to war against poor people? No. Like saying slavery needs to be eradicated. Does that mean going to war against slaves? No. That means getting rid of the thing that's oppressing the people. That's what he's saying. Whether you agree with that or not is one thing, but to be clear on his argument, he's not for eradicating people, but an ideology. And their inability to hear and accept that is irrational, biased, and quite frankly, like, it's just unacceptable.
Yeah, I think you can. If you can separate the war on poverty from, you know, a war on poor people, I think you probably could. Well, you had the most sensible take of anyone. Pleasure to speak to you.
I mean, he's right. She had the most sensible take. So interesting there. You know, obviously, I'm just giving some commentary, some thoughts on the whole conversation. I didn't hear much of any, maybe besides this one woman, any rational or coherent arguments from their side on any of the claims. I think they're highly based out of emotion and anecdotal experience, which has value. I never want to undermine that. It absolutely has value, but we as humanity should be in the pursuit of truth, right? And I think Michael Knowles is right in some ways, wrong in others. I'm not saying that I'm like full everything that he said in this video. And then I thought some of his claims were like maybe they are definitely, the way they're stated is a little outlandish to then draw a reaction, which I don't really appreciate. And so I'll end by saying how a Christian should respond, and it's difficult, is both truth and love. that's how a Christian should respond to people. And what I often see lacking from conservatives is the love part. That they don't actually care about these people's stories. They don't actually care about their life. They don't care about how it could affect them, right? Removing something like transgenderism. They don't care about that. They just care about the truth. And I'm not claiming Michael Knowles of this, particularly from this video. This format is literally built to just get your points across because you have to. That's all you have time for. So to show, a great deal of empathy and compassion for other people, this is not an easy format for that. But I'm just saying, as Christians, we should fight for the truth, which, yeah, we reject transgenderism. Like we view homosexuality as against God's beautiful design. How do we navigate that and believing that while also loving people? Extremely difficult to do. And oftentimes, just by what I stated, people will be hurt by it. But that doesn't mean we're not called to do it, which means even pushing back against some of their bias, trying to love them anyways, even if they're offended. So I thought that this episode of Surrounded was very interesting. They definitely got some entertainment value on it, and they're just hitting on a largely debated cultural topic. So those are just kind of my off the cuff thoughts for most of it. So don't judge me, okay? I'm a person just like you. But if you like the content, shoot me a like. Please subscribe. Yeah, y'all have a good one. Peace.